These cherry tomato plants will grow taller than me by the end of the year. And this is how we do it. Big furry strips. Welcome back, gardeners. Thanks for tuning in to Isaiah 61 Gardens. For as the earth brings forth its sprouts, and as the garden causes what is sown in it to sprout up, so the Lord God will cause righteousness and praise to sprout up before all nations. That's Isaiah 61 verse 11. So today we're going to be taking our tomatoes and pruning them to grow them up these stakes. We grow indeterminate tomatoes and we only have 150 square feet of garden space. Our particular tomato bed is only about 48 square feet. So we don't have a lot of area, and in order to get the best yield for this small area, we picked indeterminate varieties and then we prune them in such a way that they grow up a giant furring strip. So it looks kind of crazy. I'm out here pounding 10-foot furring strips into the ground. It kind of looks like I'm planning out my garden with these furring strips. But what I'm actually doing is these are going to be the stakes. You've all probably seen these little tomato stakes. Well, here it is, the first week of June. This isn't going to do anything for this plant. If I stick it in the ground, this little tomato stake just isn't going to do anything. For a determinate variety that's only going to grow a certain height, sure, this will work. But for single stemming indeterminate varieties, you need something much taller. This is the easternmost part of the garden, of this bed. It sees the least amount of sun, so I put my tallest varieties towards this end. My shorter varieties are going to be down there towards where I have the camera, like our beefsteaks. They're only going to grow so tall. Even the indeterminate ones, they're more of a stocky plant. So we have those down there. That way our giant cherry tomato plants, aren't going to cast a shadow on the rest of them. These cherry tomato plants will grow taller than me by the end of the year. And this is how we do it. Big furring strips in the ground early in the season. Then we take and we prune them. First off, this bottom growth, some of it can go, just so that we get air down here.
So high, let me talk. Use a ladder.
Yes, the furring strips he was saying were so tall that we had to use a ladder. So, if you watched any videos on tomatoes, you know which a sucker is. So down here I got a sucker growing. I'm going to trim off this sucker. We're going to trim off all the suckers, and these littler ones I'm just going to peel off. So wherever you have your main stem, you get on a closer plant. So up here, this is also cherry tomato, you have your main stem, then you have a leaf that comes out, and in between on that 45 there are these little suckers that come out on a 45. We're going to pop those off because we want it to focus its energy on growing straight up. If it gets to the very tippity top of this furring strip, at that point, I don't care about suckers. But for right now, unless it's at the very bottom part, because I do want to, I'll clean up all this bottom growth too, because eventually it's going to be very thick through here, and I want there to be good airflow. So after I prune this up, then I take and I just tie it off. I tie it loosely so that the stem can still expand, so they can move around. My helper here is cutting string for me. Definitely don't need it that big. So down here at the bottom there's a lot of bottom growth and suckers. We're going to trim that off. There's a sucker coming off too. This one here, that giant branch, not sure if the camera can see all that. That's one large sucker. I try to keep it so that the leaves aren't dragging around in the mulch either. Now there is gardening string designed specifically for this. I've used just standard twine, nothing poly. And as it grows, you continue to prune upwards and continue to tie it off. If you don't, then your plant is going to try to bush out everywhere. If we look back over here, this is a beefsteak, and this thing, it's just trying to become more of a bush, right? I'm going to do the same with this. I'm going to thin it. I'm going to pull some of these suckers. I'm actually probably going to use these real healthy suckers to do a video. We did last year, we did a video on how to clone plants. So we might clone again, especially because I have some disease already that's taken out some of my plants. So I'm going to have to fill in here. So it's either I store buy or I start cloning, and a month from now I can have more tomato plants to go on the ground. So these are our beefsteaks up front. We're using my shorter furring strips for these, mainly because, like I said, they aren't going to grow as tall. So this is kind of the finished product. I am trying to get this one a little more away from the center, a little more towards the edge. So that's why I have this furring strip off to this side. So you can see I've pruned it. I've gotten rid of all this extra growth that we did not need. That's actually a garlic scape that somebody tossed over here. I got rid of all this extra little growth that we did not need. And then I tied it off. And we'll continue to do that as we go up. And it is the first week of June. I could go ahead and let this start blossoming. I don't know if I'm going to. I'm not too worried about blossoms right now. I want to continue to put down better growth upward and more growth in the form of roots downward. So for right now, we're just going to prune that little bit off. These flowers that are starting here, I'll probably let that actually go to maturity. And that'll be our first fruit.
I have to retie this.
So my helper over here, he's taking care of this other cherry. We had an extra cherry tomato variety grow, so I stuck it right here in the middle. We'll see how it does. This one here, you can see I started pruning it. This is one of those suckers. We're going to pop that off. This is one of those suckers. We're going to pop that off. This is one of those suckers. And this is. And you can see it's starting to really sag on its own weight, so it's ready for support. And then some of this bottom growth will trim up. But this will be tied off, and then as it gets bigger, it'll tie off again, and again. And at the end of the year, these plants will be taller than me, unless something happens that takes them out. Alright, so this bed is 12 by 4, and I have 18 plants in it. So it's 48 square feet, 18 plants. Quick math, I think that comes out to like 2.5 square feet per plant. That's it. So in order to grow in such confined space, I can't have bushy plants that are trying to vine across the ground. So I use the indeterminate and I grow them up the stake. That helps me maximize my area and maximize my yield for such a small space. Thanks for tuning into our channel. Please help us out by liking, subscribing, sharing, doing all those things that help our videos get popular. You can also drop comments, maybe share your tips on how you grow. Talk about the different varieties you grow. I, like I say, only grow indeterminate, most of which I buy my seeds from MI Gardener. Most of these tips that I'm sharing with you, I actually learned from watching his videos and other videos. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.